Talking about threats to Western institutions and civilization, so one of the jewels in the crown of Western civilization, without which we really don't have a future in the West, are universities, of course. You're a graduate of some of the great universities in the world. You've studied in Columbia, you studied at Oxford. Do you go to universities and speak to students? And what do you know about universities, both here as well as in the UK, and their approach to some of the issues we spoke about, and specifically about their understanding of Israel?
I speak at universities a lot, and I have done so, I'd say, for the better part of 10 years. I'd be inclined to say certainly the situation has worsened over that period. But the essence of the misinformation, both coming from student groups and faculty, is of significant longstanding. It's apparent to me that even the Zionism is racism events, movement, resolutions at the United Nations that we saw in the 1970s were ultimately born out of academic discourse. All of this has essentially started in the academy and filtered through elsewhere. So it makes sense then that the academy has got to an absolute extreme, which is probably going to foreshadow where other institutions follow through to. I didn't quite study at Columbia, but I was there as a researcher in the National Security Law program. So I was a visiting fellow, and ostensibly, part of the faculty there. I spent a lot of time with members of faculty, and I saw that this was not just a bottom-up phenomenon, but it was very much a top-down.
When were you at Columbia?
2018, so not all that long ago.
Mm-hmm. So looking back, do you understand now what erupted post-October 7th at, say, Columbia, an institution that you know from firsthand experience?
Yes. It didn't surprise me at all, I'm sorry to say. I certainly saw it on full display when I was there. It probably didn't surprise me that Columbia has very much led the way on the extreme chaos, violence even that we have seen, rhetoric certainly. But as I say, it's not just come from the students. It has very much been encouraged by faculty. All of this is interrelated, especially in the context of international law, because the academy plays such a significant role in discussion about it, and in its development. One of the sources of international law is considered to be the statements of the most well-respected jurists, academics on the subject. So I think the backlash that we have seen, the realization of what has happened, is the only encouraging thing that I can take out of this debacle. I consider it to be a significant indictment, though, on us, on society more broadly, because it is not just as a result of questionable Qatari funding of these institutions and the establishment of chairs in studies that are designed specifically to demonize the Jewish state and the development of teaching materials that propagate blood libels. All of that is essentially a significant problem that has to be addressed. But so much of this has caused these institutions really to become rotten to the core. There is another aspect of this, which has meant that the material has fallen on such fertile ground. And that, I think, is the lack of purpose that the generation that is currently going through these institutions unfortunately has. They have been welcomed with open arms into groups that support terrorism. They have camped out and felt as though they were part of something because they have been given no understanding and no pride in the Western liberal democratic values that the causes they have thrown their weight behind are seeking to harm and essentially tear down. And that I see as an indictment on us, because if we are to have pride and a sense of purpose in what we have achieved, and a recognition that democratic values and the freedoms that we enjoy are fragile and need to be protected, and that actually the most important purpose one can have is in picking up the baton when the younger generation tire of that fight to protect those values that we hold dear. It is up to that younger generation to pick up the baton and continue that fight. And that is, I think, where the disconnect has erupted. And instead, we have seen these people in seeking purpose these young people, throw themselves into the cause of internationally prescribed terrorist organizations. I don't know how we come back from that.